In a secluded mountain community, Selah and her sister Tamar play by a waterfall, laughing as they make their way back home through rugged terrain to a group of wooden cabins. Here, the women, known as sisters and wives, sing peacefully while completing their chores, worshipping the group's only male leader, the shepherd. During dinner, the daughters, dressed in blue, sit on one side of the table, while the wives, in red, sit across from them. When the shepherd finishes eating, he selects a wife to receive his grace. Each night, the daughters sleep apart from their mothers and pray to the shepherd, who they see as a god. The next morning, the shepherd preaches to the women, reminding them of their purpose as his wives and how he sacrifices to provide for them. Clad in white, the women admire him as he speaks, though Selah seems preoccupied. The shepherd dips his fingers in goat's blood and marks each woman's face as they cry with gratitude. Later, while Selah and Tamar are alone in the woods, they spot the shepherd from afar. Selah sends Tamar ahead, choosing to linger with him. As they walk, he teases her about her distraction during his sermon, and she smiles, feeling special. The shepherd praises her beauty, touching her hair. When she asks about her mother, he refuses, instead nearly kissing her, but stops, instructing her to have her hair redone by the wives. Selah feels hopeful, imagining herself as his future wife. Back at the cabin, Selah and her friend Tabitha are doing chores when Eloise, a young wife, recounts her time with the shepherd, stirring Selah's jealousy. Tabitha warns her not to speak ill of the wives, and the two argue until Tabitha's mother intervenes, sending Selah to bring leftovers to the hut where impure women are kept. Inside, she finds a young woman, unconscious from fasting during her period. Another woman, Sarah, steps from the shadows, her body covered in scars, surprised by the food. Selah encourages her to eat and purify herself, believing, as the shepherd teaches, that women sent to the hut must repent for Eve's sin. Sarah warns Selah that soon, she too will lose her special status with the shepherd, leaving Selah visibly disturbed. To release her frustration, she kicks stones outside. Later that night, Adrielle, a pregnant wife, tucks in her daughter Lily, who begs for a story, but Adrielle reminds her that only the shepherd tells them. As the others sleep, Selah's fixation on the shepherd grows as she watches him through a window. In his cabin, he watches her back with Eloise, placing his fingers in her mouth as they both observe Selah. The next day, some wives bathe the shepherd while others bathe the daughters. The shepherd assigns Selah to help a sheep give birth. Despite guidance, she's overwhelmed, alone with the sheep. She falls asleep and wakes to find a dying sheep with its newborn lamb and realizes her period has started. Frustrated, she wipes herself with wool and screams. Later, Selah tells Tamar a wild dog killed the lamb, though she envisions herself stabbing it. When the wives find out, they bring her to the shepherd, who forgives her, though she still feels impure. That night, Selah overhears a police officer warning the shepherd to leave or face arrest. The next day, he tells everyone they must search for a new Eden. He collapses dramatically, and the women rush to help while Selah stands back, confused. Before they depart, the women chant a farewell. As they travel, Selah asks the shepherd why they can't settle in abandoned houses they pass, but he dismisses them as tainted by broken people. Later, Selah notices the shepherd advancing on Eloise in a tent near the bonfire. That night, she returns to an abandoned house and contemplates a painting of the landscape. As Selah turns around, she's caught off guard by Eloise smirking at her. But the expression fades when Eloise reveals bruises on her neck. The next morning, Tabitha cries out, horrified, as Selah's bloodstains can no longer be hidden. Tabitha brands her impure, and Selah is forced to walk at the back with Sarah, the woman she had recently shunned. During a break to escape the strong winds, the wives gaze wistfully at the shepherd, who holds two daughters in his arms, reminiscing about when they were favored by him. A younger wife bitterly comments that he has lost interest in them with age, and she's quickly slapped for her remark. In a quiet moment, Selah asks Sarah about her mother. Sarah reveals that Selah's mother didn't die in childbirth, but from an infection because the shepherd refused to seek medical help. Both women had joined the cult together, competing for his attention until Selah's mother passed. As the group trudges onward, Selah's doubts about the shepherd deepen. When she sees a car on a nearby road, she imagines herself inside it, free and dressed like a normal teenager, with Sarah and her mother up front. Visions that stir unfamiliar longings within her. That night, Selah finds comfort in her growing closeness to Sarah, realizing she finally has someone to confide in about her misgivings toward the shepherd. Sarah shares a memory of sneaking out at night to stand naked by the waterfall, feeling a rare sense of freedom. When Selah asks why she never left, Sarah says she has nowhere else to go and fears the world beyond. Noticing their bond, the shepherd takes advantage of Sarah's vulnerability, spending the night with her as Selah watches from afar. The next morning, Selah is allowed to rejoin the group. The shepherd apologizes for her time spent with Sarah, whom he describes as broken. Suddenly, Adriel goes into labor from the grueling journey. The daughters cling to each other, frightened, as Adriel's screams echo around them. The wives try to assist her, but despite their efforts, Adriel tragically dies in childbirth. At Adriel's funeral, the shepherd forcefully takes Lily from her mother's body. Sarah accuses him of causing Adriel's death, calling him by his real name, Michael. Unmoved, the shepherd leads the funeral, burning Adriel's body as the others sing. Selah, watching the flames, has a vision of herself, furious, in front of Adriel's burning corpse. The next day, Selah notices Sarah staying back. Sarah tells Selah she's leaving with the baby, who the shepherd claimed must be abandoned because only one ram is allowed. She urges Selah to stay strong and look after her sisters before she leaves with the child. When Tamar questions their destination, the shepherd strikes her, demanding she lead the way if she doubts him. The others, fearful, stay silent as Selah watches with anger. Later, the shepherd baptizes everyone in a lake, holding Selah underwater longer. She envisions herself drowning in crimson water before he pulls her up. That night, the shepherd summons her. Ignoring Tamar's warning, Selah goes. Inside, he tells her she resembles her mother and silences her with his fingers. Later, Selah lies still, her visions darkening as she imagines the sisters devouring him. Selah breaks the rules by telling the daughters a story about a woman who found freedom by a waterfall. In the morning, they find the wives gone. At the lake, the shepherd claims the river took them away. When he asks Selah to marry him, she rejects him, calling him no true shepherd. The shepherd is stunned by Selah's rejection, prompting him to slap her. Enraged by visions of the abuses he inflicted on the wives, Selah retaliates fiercely. Meanwhile, police arrive at the site where the remains of the old wives have washed ashore. They follow a trail adorned with shepherd paintings and signs of past inhabitants, leading them to discover the shepherd hanging from a tree, seemingly lifeless, with ram's horns on his head, suggesting he may be a demon in disguise. In contrast, the daughters gather before a waterfall, mirroring Sarah's story. Selah stands among them, cradling a bleeding lamb in her arms, symbolizing innocence amidst the chaos.